If we really could just take religion out of the equation, the world would be a better place.
To me, that sounds foolish.
If you choose to not follow God, respectfully, you can't be mad when you're not in heaven. Welcome to the Kingdom Come podcast. We are your hosts, Austin Howenstein
And Derrick Jenkins.
We are two friends from college here to encourage you in your walk with the Lord.
Our desire is to help and challenge you encounter the kingdom of God in your everyday life and everywhere you go. Let's get it. So I did want to address something that you had mentioned earlier, and you had said that you don't necessarily feel the need for a God in your life per se. Would you say that that comes from a place of the fact that you have all your needs met and that you're provided for? Do you think that that plays any part in not feeling like you need a God? Like feeling like the life that you have currently is you're satisfied, you're content with it. Do you feel like that is a big part of the reason that you don't need God?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, two things I want to talk about. Two things that pop in my head when I hear that question. So, and this goes back to my upbringing. My dad's favorite song, and I think whether it's just nostalgia or, I mean, I love the song, just standalone, but I think because, too, I have this attachment to the song as it relates to my dad. The song Imagine by John Lennon. It's the same song they play every Olympic Games. I don't know if you guys saw the Paris Olympics.
Yeah.
Most recently.
I didn't know that.
But every single Olympic Games since the song was written, they make it a point at some point during the opening ceremony, every single Olympic Games, to play that song. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us, only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion, too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join me. The world can then finally be as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. That's the song.
And so one thing is like, so he's saying that the way to attain true unity in the world is through a lack of God.
Part of it, yeah. Part of it.
Do you agree with that?
So
if you remove God from the equation, the world would be unified?
That would not be the only thing we would need to remove from the world. But I think, and again, and this is where we, where this conversation with each other gets uncomfortable, because it's like, this is where we probably do get diametrically opposed.
Yeah, and let's do it.
And let's do it. It's all good.
And we can do it in a respectful way.
Yeah, 100%. And it's like, that, I guess, to me, is something at my core, even from that time when I was a 16-year-old kid taking those confirmation classes, that I thought about way back then. Mm-hmm. And I guess as I've gotten older and wiser, maybe dumber, I don't know, but I just feel like my lived experience has reinforced that idea of, wow, if we really could just take religion out of the equation, the world would be a better place. And I know, like, you guys probably hear that and are like, ooh, that is wrong.
So, okay, I do want to, because you brought up earlier about semantics.
Yeah.
So do you view religion and faith as the same thing?
No, not necessarily. No.
Okay.
No.
So then, because we're probably not too far off, honestly, when it comes to religion, because we're not like, I believe in the Christian faith. You know what I'm saying? I identify as Christian because, like I said, I believe in Jesus, and that's what that means. But like, I'm not going to just.
It's not about the religion,
the religious
ceremony.
practice. Yeah, it's not about the practices. It's about the faith and belief in Jesus, if that makes sense. And so, like, when you say religion, there's a certain connotation to that. And I do want to, when I talk about religion, I'm talking about like my faith being like the center of me doing these things. And the grand scheme of the fact that matters that for most people that isn't the case. For most people it is a religion rather than a faith thing, that they go to church because they're supposed to, because their parents made them to, and that's just what they know to do. You know what I'm saying? But their hearts are far from God. You know, and so like I just wanted to make sure that when you say religion, because our focus isn't on religion, it's on faith, if that makes sense. It's on relationship with God. And so I wanted to make sure that we created the dichotomy there between like religion and faith.
Because like, so I think based on the song or based on that worldview, it's like, okay, you remove God's religion, then it would make people unified. And the reason that in that worldview it would make people unified is because then all people would be the same. As in, then we would all have the same view of the world, a lack of God. But if God is real, then you can't remove him from the equation. That I would say that if all people agreed on religion as well, if every single person was a Christian and lived it out, the world would be a perfect place. Point blank, period. If every single person believed the Bible and lived it out, that means every person would love perfectly. That means every person would give to their neighbor. Like you were saying off air, that it's like you and your wife care for your elderly neighbor. That is a good act. And if all people were a devoted follower of Christ, the world would be perfect. And that's why I think it's worth dying for, to be honest.
So I guess, Austin, and this is like a point where I would prefer to have specific documents in front of me to go off of. But my only issue with that statement is that and for what it's worth, I have read the entire Bible front to back, long time ago. But I have done it. Now again, the Bible, written by man, written by God.
We can leave that one.
We can leave that on the side, but
because I believe it's inspired by God, but I don't believe that's required to be a Christian.
Yeah. My problem is there is language, there are ideas in the Christian Bible that I don't believe is perfect. And if a God does exist, which again, remember, I'm an agnostic. I'm not an atheist. If God does exist, and it's a God that I believe is possible, I don't believe that the words in the Christian Bible reach the level of pureness, of sanctity that you're describing.
But so based on whose standard? On yours?
Based on my standard. Okay. Yeah, on my standard.
One of my favorite parts of the Bible. You're familiar with the story of Job?
Yeah.
So Job, God put him, like for people listening to, it's like God put him through all these trials. And like his life was great. And then God allowed Satan to make his life bad.
Yeah.
And at one point, like Job he's holding strong. And then he just comes to his breaking point. And he's like, God, why this? Why this? Why'd you allow this? Why'd you allow this? And he's coming at God's neck. And God's like, hold up. You were not there when I formed the world. You were not there when I formed the universe. You did not do these things. You do not understand. And I think at times it's like, there's times where I'm looking at things, I'm like, why is that considered sin? Why is that considered morally bad? And there's times where I have to sit back and realize I'm like Job. I don't know all of the workings of the universe. But I serve a God who made it all. So he knows it all. As in, I like to use this this analogy is, say you made robots and you made a robot that worked perfectly. And you hand me the remote. I don't know what I'm doing. And I start just messing with it. I'm like, John, this thing doesn't even work. Like, this thing sucks. And you're like, no, you just controlled it wrong. And it wasn't that the robot was bad Or it wasn't that you, the creator, were bad. It was that me, the controller, was bad. Like the user.
So the creator nor the creation was bad.
Exactly.
It was just
The
way it's used.
the way I was using it was bad.
Right.
In that God created a world. In the Christian worldview, he created it good, without sin, without moral blemish. And then Adam and Eve, whether you believe they're a historical person or not, I don't think that's important for salvation. The story goes that people decided to disobey God. And then now all of us are living in a fallen world, a world with sin, because it's no longer perfect, because people corrupted it. And then we as people look at God and say, your creation is bad. And he's looking back at us saying, you don't understand, because I created it good. Y'all decided to make it bad. And that's when it's like, when we look at religion as the cause of pain and suffering, I think it's a failure to look at God in his proper view. That he didn't do that. We're guilty of that.
So to that point, God himself may not have done it, but then this goes back to what I said earlier about the practicality. How does faith, religion, spirituality, how does it play out in this world that we all live in together? And the thing is, it's almost, to me, at times I feel like people who are trying to adhere to a particular faith, because this is a fallen world, we are therefore trying to put a square peg into a round hole. And in order to live in a world that can best reflect the wishes and the ideals of whatever God may exist, there are probably much more helpful, more reasonable, easier ways. Not necessarily easier, it's not a good word, but there's more helpful ways to organize ourselves and our society so that we do reflect to the best we can the image of whatever being does exist and that does love us and that does want the best for us.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a question, and so I don't mean it in like, more just a reflection question.
Yeah.
Have you achieved moral perfection?
Absolutely not.
So what do you think you are correct on every moral dilemma? As in, do you think you know everything, what is morally right or good in every circumstance?
No. I no. Because that would go back to, then I would call myself arrogant.
Okay.
I would call myself arrogant.
So do you think there's a possibility that you are wrong on the moral stances that you disagree with on God?
Of course it's possible. I guess, though, Austin, and this would be my difference. I recognize that I'm wrong. A lot of people, again, there's a lot of people who are like me. They're just, you don't, because these conversations don't happen all the time. Going back to the song, with Imagine, I hope someday you'll join us. You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people like us. I guess, Austin, big difference that I see happening is you have people like me who recognize, okay, you know what? I might be wrong, and therefore I'm not going to push my beliefs and my doctrine or my faith on you. Where what we've found historically, not just Christianity, but the major faiths, religions of the world, to me, the problem is, hey, you all have decided to force your faith and your doctrine on the rest of us. Through often very violent means. And I feel like right there,
Mhm.
right there, that standing alone says to me that, hey, this is why my moral stance is, in my mind, correct. Because I would never commit violence on anyone who does not buy into what I believe in. Or I will not ever try to force somebody.
Who didn't force you to believe, though? The one who created you.
Hold on.
So
Who did not
So
force me to believe.
humans have
Mhm.
tried to force other humans to be Christians.
Yeah, 100%.
God has never forced a person to follow him. That he gave you free will. And so this is a moment where you are diverging from fallen people who are wearing the wrong jersey.
Yeah,
we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Versus diverging on who God is.
Mm-hmm.
God gave you free will to be a Christian or to not.
Right.
Now, ultimately, we will have to answer for the decision we make with that within the Christian worldview. But he is not forcing you to choose him or to not choose him.
Mm-hmm.
And so that dilemma that you have there is not a dilemma with God. It's a dilemma with man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think when it comes to things of God, we need to drop all dilemmas with man.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there is hope for eternity with God, if there is hope for moral perfection with God, if there is hope for hope and joy and love and peace with God, are we going to allow a person who has not shown us that properly keep us from that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I want us to I would encourage you to push past the actions of a dumb person.
Mm-hmm.
And say, okay, what is God actually intending here?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
John, how do you feel about the fact that I want you to be a Christian? And you know,
Yeah.
it's you know,
Yeah, you want me to be.
That's real. I do. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because of what I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want for you. You're a friend of mine. I want that for you. How does that make you feel?
I mean, it makes me feel. It makes me feel loved. It lets me know, like, hey, we have formed, Derrick, a bond that can't even necessarily be explained. You know, the fact that you want that for me, that is something that you have that I don't have. That says a lot about you as a person. Now, but again, going back to my point of, I don't believe it's Jesus Christ that makes you, Derrick Jenkins, who you are. Mm-hmm. You are perceiving that you have something that I don't. And therefore, you want to help me get that. Right. Civil rights activist, pastor Jesse Jackson famously said when he was running for president, the only time you should ever look down on someone is when you're trying to figure out how to help them up. Mm-hmm. So, I guess, Derrick, again, going back to your specific question, I feel loved, I feel appreciated, but then I also feel like subconsciously there might be an element of you're viewing me as someone who does not have something that you have. Not materially, which is how we often view things. You know, like, hey, I have a bigger house than you. I want you to have a bigger house.
Right. It's nothing like
but that spiritually, I'm lacking something. Yeah. As opposed to, I don't feel as though I'm lacking anything. I just feel how I view the world. It's just different. Mm-hmm. We're looking at it through different prisms.
Okay. Because we've talked before, and I remember you told me that one thing you said the one thing that does relatively entice you or you yearn for that you don't currently have in your current worldview is peace.
Yeah.
You've addressed
I don't have peace, and
there's a way for you to have peace. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a God shaped. I feel like in my worldview, there's a God shaped hole in everybody's heart or everybody's life. There's a God shaped hole, and for you, to me, it looks like it is peace. You see what I'm saying? And that there is a peace that is offered to you if you so choose to receive it.
Yeah, it's not a square peg in a circle hole. It's anything else other than a cross peg in a cross hole.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like how I view it or how I look at it is that like, man, there is something for you in that I do, since you voiced that, I do see a lack or something that you're missing. And I want you to have that as well as afterlife and all that. That stuff is cool. We talked about that. But like right now, man, I want you to have like a peace within that. And I want that to like mean something deeper for you.
When I was in school, both undergrad and grad school, I ended up reading a lot of Marx. A lot of what you hear about it, it's incorrect. It's propaganda, scare tactics, But so Marx, something he said, and the more I've thought about it as I've gotten older, it's like, wait, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think it explains why, when it comes to that idea of peace, why I don't feel like religion or faith would give me that, is Marx said specifically that religion was an expression of distress and a protest against the real suffering of people in an exploitative world. Marx thought that religion gave people a sense of security and salvation, but that sense of security and salvation is just an illusion. I'm sure you guys have heard the phrase, religion is the opiate of the masses. It's one of Marx's most famous phrases. Part of why Marx said that was his point was that when we focus or when we turn to faith and religion, it actually often is a distraction to solving the real social and economic problems that plague us materially.
But I feel like that comes down to there's a problem that needs to be solved. And the only way to solve a problem is with an answer. And he's saying that he's saying that religion is the distraction from the answer. Yeah, I would argue that the division is the distraction. And that since we have differing views, like a lot of these arguments have come down to remove religion, because if you remove religion, then you will remove division. And yeah, there's division in the world based on religion, but I don't necessarily think that makes it a distraction, because what if one of those distractions, quote unquote, is the answer?
Because lack of division and then like intentional unity are, I feel like it's different in regard to like, if there was no God, sure, like we'd all be in agreement on that. But the fact of the matter is there's a large enough people who believe there is a God that the actual closest way to peace would be if everyone did believe in the same God. Yeah. It's actually, that's more realistic than everybody believing that there's not a God, based off of where we are at in the world as well, I feel like. And then to say like because religion has been used, like, so you've seen Birth of a Nation, you know of that, how they used the Bible to keep slaves from revolting and things like that. That has been used in that way. And so we're not, and I understand the aspect in people how they say religion is a distraction to the real problem. Yeah. Right. But our counter argument is our faith is the conduit for us to go about it the correct way, morally, in the way that God wants justice to be sought. Because the same God that we talk about, that we read about, he is a God of justice as well. And so he does want us to pursue that. There's just certain parameters and ways that he desires for us to go about doing that Sure, that can be tainted by the way certain religions have moved and the way certain people have went about it, but it's actually not a distraction for us, but the channel through which we pursue justice, if that makes sense. That I wouldn't have a good bearing for what is just. I personally believe that. I know you don't believe that about me. I personally believe I would not have the right perspective of just if I didn't have God illuminating that path for me.
Because Jesus, when in John 17, he's praying, and he's like, this is his prayer for his disciples and his followers after he leaves.
Yeah.
And what he says would be the evidence that he is God is the unity of believers. And he's like, in that when we are united, it is evidence to who he is. Mm-hmm. And the thing is, after, like, when you read the book of Acts especially, it's like right after Jesus ascends to heaven, then it's like there's this sense of unity within the church. Right. Thousands and thousands of people are coming to know Jesus as Lord and Savior because they are seeing something different, and it's unity is that agent. Mm-hmm. And over time, it comes back to Christians wearing the jersey, or Christians, people wearing the jersey of Christ but not following him, have divided and caused division with the wrong people. As in, I think it's important for us to call out sin within the church, within Christians. But like, I think it's stupid for me to go up to a person who does not live for Jesus and say, hey, stop doing these actions. Because that's sin. No, like, they don't even know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, so why would they stop doing those things that we consider sin? And that has created division in the world with Christ on something that Jesus was not condemning sinners. That he was condemning the church people who thought they were better than everyone. So like, he went to the Pharisees, the people who were the teachers of Jewish like tradition, and he was like, hey, you are a broken vessel. You are empty. He wasn't going to the sinner saying, hey, stop sinning. No, when they come to know him, he's like, hey, go sin no more. That us as Christians, we're supposed to desire a life without sin. But that's like, I think a lot of times, and maybe even yourself, you've had a sour taste in your mouth for Christians because they are fighting against people who don't know God on the way they're living their life, when that's not what Jesus did. He says that when you make me your Lord, then those things will change. But the lordship comes before the behavior modification. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
He does not like, hey, stop doing this, this, and that. No sex before marriage because I said so. He's like, no, when you're my king, when I'm your king, when Jesus is our king, then the actions of our life will change to be in accordance with that. It's not, let me change my actions, and that equates to the lordship of Jesus.
I think all right. So I think where the conversation is going, I think this is all kind of revolving again around that. It goes back to that song that I shared with you guys. The idea of unity, in a way, like I want the world to be unified. I want the world to be unified. I believe Christians want the world to be unified.
Yeah, to a certain extent. Like,
to a certain extent.
Through Christ, unified in Christ.
Okay.
It's like the little like thing I would add to the back end of that, because it is different.
Because it's the only way for us to be unified with them.
Right. From our world.
Oh, yeah. So that's, and I think that's where we fundamentally have a disagreement. I believe there's a way for the world to be unified without Christ coming into the picture at all, where it sounds like you guys, your side says, no, that is the only way.
Because think back to morality.
Yeah.
Unity cannot happen without a definition of unity.
Hitler wanted unity.
Yeah. Hitler wanted unity, but he went about it in a bad way.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like, I think everyone at their core desires unity. Why do we desire that? I would argue it's something that God has placed on our heart. That there are certain things that he has placed on our heart to desire because they are good. But like there cannot, like morality, goodness, it's all an illusion if God's not real. You can have an illusion of unity. What's the use? So that you can have a happy 80 years and then die?
See, I guess, Austin, then that right there is where I guess where I disagree with that is, the fact that the three of us are having this conversation in this room shows a level of humanity and unity here.
Yeah.
This is no illusion, what we're experiencing right now. To me, if we were to attribute, and maybe you guys probably would, hey, it's God that brought the three of us together today. To me, that is the illusion. Where you guys say, no, that's why this is happening. And I guess I'm viewing it through a more humanistic point of view where, no, to me, God is the illusion. The three of us as human beings who are just interested in conversation, who are loving people, who just enjoy talking.
Sure.
That is no illusion.
Right, sure.
This is why we're here.
And that may sound like that, an illusion, if you just take it at this one like situation. But the beautiful thing about where like our faith comes and why we're able to stand on such strong foundation is because we see like the crumbs of Jesus in our life. We're able to see like just the dots. Like when we had an incredible episode with Glenn Davis, and he says like our faith is not just empty like wishing.
Glenn Davis. You guys had Glenn Davis?
Not the one that
Oh,
you think of.
I was thinking Big Baby. Like, you guys had Big Baby?
No,
Could
no,
he
no,
fit
no.
in this chair?
If you listen to the first 5 seconds, it's like Big Baby Davis.
Big Baby Davis.
Yeah.
But like, and he says that as like if you look at it like a scatter plot, and you begin to see the dots, line up, and you're able to make a trend line. And as you make a trend line, you're able to extrapolate like what do you think the future trend would be? You know what I'm saying? And then you're able to do that pretty confidently if the dots line up. You know what I'm saying? So like when it comes to our faith in Christ, it ends up being a thing that we've seen the moves of God in our life. We've seen God. Had God bring something to my mind with somebody I've never met before, and I was able to speak specifically to a situation that they were going through. Never knew the person ever before. I see things like that happen, and I see God just had me randomly bumping into somebody and then end up speaking life to them, and then they end up giving their life to God and living differently for the rest of their life. I see all these things happen, and then eventually it's like, maybe it's not as much of a coincidence as I thought it was. Maybe as I continue to see these things happen so consistently, and they line up with a book that is never wrong as far as when I've read, and like I would like to think I'm a very logical person. And so like I'm reading the Bible and I look for contradictions and I can't find them. And so you see my experience lining up with a book, lining up with I'm praying about something and Austin encourages me and had no idea that I was praying about that. I see all these things happen and it's like, bruh, like at a certain point I have to be able to be like, there's some, as what you likely believe there's a higher power in the mix of this earth. I begin to have to wonder, what could that be? Oh, it lines up perfectly with this book that I read, the Bible that talks about Jesus. And so that is how I've been able to comfortably stand on a firm foundation that Jesus is real and he is the God of the universe. It's kind of like where my stance comes from.
Okay, so the book itself, or to discuss the book itself. This, no doubt, I mean, you would be anyone, including me, who has a lot of problems with Christianity. Would anybody, even from my perspective, would be foolish to say that the Bible is not an incredible book, in that it no doubt the evidence is clear. It's transformed the world in the way that it has. But to me, at the end of the day, it's a book. It's a book. And the lessons that a lot of people have gotten out of that book, if it serves them well, again, I have no problem with that. But just as someone who has changed their life due to that book, anyone can look at another book, any other book, and say, I mean, I could give you guys the Motorcycle Diaries. I could give you guys a book like the Motorcycle Diaries and point to points in the book that say, look, this right here shows you a way of how you can live your life. And
all right, there's self-help books,
books.
you know, they have good things. You have something?
Well, yeah. So would you say, like, you're a history teacher?
Yeah.
So a history book changed your life to some degree.
Sure, yeah.
What if one of your students comes up to you and is like, hey, Mr. John, this is nothing more than a book.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I would say, what makes you say that?
And
Why?
like, ultimately,
why?
it would come down to, hey, like, this is real stuff that happened in history.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible, whether you want to say all of its history or some of its history, whatever, there's history in there.
Mm-hmm.
And that history that points to the character, the goodness, the nature of God, that says, hey, if you live your life in this kind of way, you will receive joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control.
Faithfulness.
I always, a
always
joke
forget
between
that.
us is I always forget one of the fruit of the Spirit. And so it's like, why do you look at that one as just a book, but others not?
Right, 100%.
Yeah.
So, and then also the other thing then I would say to a student who would come to me with that, I would also say, hey, you know what? That's okay. For you, this particular tool doesn't serve you. That's okay. We all don't need that same tool to serve us. So, like, for the two of you guys, what the Bible has done for the two of you and has done for billions of people throughout history, if it's made you the person who you wanted to become,
I didn't want to become this. I'm just going to say
you
that.
didn't want to.
No,
okay,
by
Not
no
at all.
means.
all right.
Not at all.
Or if it made you become the person that you did become,
Yeah.
then that to me, then that was a tool for you. And I'm glad that that tool at some point was presented to you as such, and that you found use in that tool.
Mm-hmm.
But as human beings, we're not all, we're all so vastly different.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I've never found that particular tool, just to use that word,
Yeah.
to be useful for me in the way that it has been useful to you guys. I have found other tools. Just as I know, I'm not saying that is a singular tool for you guys.
Right. There's
We
more
are-
to
there's-
it, but
yes,
but
more
that is
to
a
it.
really important part. Of
But say I want to go fix a car,
Yeah.
and there's a Phillips screwdriver,
Yeah. Right.
and I give you a Phillips screwdriver, but it's the wrong size.
Yeah.
Like the Phillips screws that are holding this together is like, if I use the wrong size screwdriver, it's just going to strip the screw, and then the screw is going to be useless. And I think sometimes we blame it on the tool. Oh, that tool worked for you, but it didn't work for me. But it's like, we all are created for the one tool to work. But when we're using the tool wrong, it strips us to some degree.
Right.
And that now you're like, for you, it's like maybe that you've tried a variation of the tool so many times, but you didn't try the true person of Jesus. And that's one thing is, I think we've been talking philosophy, and that it's like, okay, our philosophies of the world. At the end of the day, philosophy is nothing other than words. Nothing.
Right.
But what Jesus, the life that Jesus laid out, if you live the way he called you to live, and like truly say, you know what, I'm going to live this way, that's an experiment to some degree. You're testing an experiment.
Sure.
Hey, I'm not just going to ask you to reveal yourself to me. I'm going to start walking in it and see if there's anything to this. I think sometimes we need to drop the philosophy and live it as a science and say, you know what? Let me see if living my life the way that Jesus told me to live my life will change everything. And I believe that when you do, you see that God is who he says he is, and that Jesus is the Son of God. He is the Messiah, and he's the only way to true life.
Because that's what happened for me. Like, that's what changed my life. Like, I tried Jesus genuinely.
Yeah.
You know, like
we tried church and it didn't work.
We tried church, it didn't work. And then I literally committed to reading the Bible, praying, and being disciplined with growing closer to God based off of hey, how can I grow closer to God? And people gave me suggestions, and I tried it. And I tried it for like a month or two. And then at the end of it, I really felt like God asked me, like, okay, so what you gonna do now? I've showed you. What you gonna do now? And I was like, man, you're real. I'm gonna live my life for you. And it transformed my life. And so it's like, I've been exposed to church. I was exposed to church when I was little. I was baptized when I was 6 years old. All of that. And I grew up, and I actually liked going to church, which was cool. But when I tried Jesus for real, he showed up, and I was able to see him. And that worst case scenario, like, if you, where you're at your lower 30s, you tried Jesus for a month, and you read the Gospels, and you prayed, and you genuinely sought after him, and I believe by the end of that, he would definitely show up to you. I believe without a shadow of doubt. And that even if he didn't, you continue going on living life as you see fit. But if he does, it will change your life fully and completely. And it would only be for the better. And that's the beautiful thing about our faith.
So, and this is good. So earlier, how did you phrase the question? You asked me earlier,
what would it take for you to believe in God?
Not that part. The part, am I satisfied with my life?
Yeah, something to that effect, like, yeah, are you satisfied?
Why do you need God if you feel like all of your needs are met? Was it that one?
Or, are all of your needs met?
Yeah.
I think, is that what you had asked me earlier?
Yeah, it was to that effect. Why do you
effect.
feel so comfortable with not having a relationship with the higher power that could be there?
So, and I guess you say, John, if you try God, I believe you would find this or that.
If you tried Jesus.
If you tried Jesus. Yes. I'm... And it's because I'm a person who I'm always looking to find ways to become a better version of myself, of course. But I feel I've been at a point in my life for a long time where, despite all of the things that I've gone through in my life, I am satisfied to the point where I don't feel like I need that. Like, I don't even feel the need to try that specifically. Now, I know you could say, well, but John, aren't you a curious person? I feel like, we're as we get older, we continue to think differently about things. I've given Jesus a shot. Now, I haven't in a long time. I did when I was younger. And when I gave Jesus a shot was probably the time where maybe, if he does exist, that's when I would have needed him the most. But that is not, it didn't work, or it didn't, there was nothing that was revealed to me that drastically changed my life for the better, where as I got older, there were other things that I've tried, that I continue to try, that I have found have enhanced my life. Spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally. And so I guess too, what I'm realizing is like a disconnect between people like you guys and people like me is and guys, I want you to always correct me because I'm trying to select my words very carefully.
Yeah.
I feel as though having a relationship with Jesus, for me, is not needed. Where for you guys believe that having a relationship with Jesus is needed, and that is everything.
Yeah.
And that's where fundamentally
So
we're on opposite sides.
yeah, and feelings aren't always true. Would that be correct?
Yeah, 100%.
So a podcast I listen to, Dr. John Deloney show, he's a therapist, and so he says your feelings are designed to protect you. That anxiety is not reality. That we feel anxious about something because our body and our feelings like, yo, that might hurt you. But it might, like, that social interaction is not going to hurt you. Your body's, there may have been something in your past that has taught your body to protect you from those situations. And I think sometimes when people have had poor understandings of faith, now your body, your feelings are like, hey, you're good by yourself. You don't need God. You can do this on your own. But I would argue that the reality is that, all right, let's think about this for a second. Think about this. If God, the Christian God, is real, then he created you. He created me. He created Derrick. And he created us all with a purpose. And that purpose can only truly be found in him. In that, like that robot we talked about earlier, that it had a purpose. But if I didn't know how to control it, I could not bring it to its full purpose. That I could do some things with that robot, but it's never going to do what it was designed to do. And then I would argue that you were designed to do something. And you might even be doing something similar, but it's not with the full power that you could have with God and with the full effectiveness. Because it's like, if God is real, then he has designed us to desire him and to desire something, because at our core, we need something other than our regular life.
100%.
Because you're like, I've tried things. I've tried this. People are like, I've tried this religion. I've tried this religion. I've tried this. Because he created us in a way that we need him. And when we don't come to him, we can find temporary satisfaction. We can find temporary peace, temporary joy. Like, drugs can make somebody feel good for a time.
Sure.
But then it leaves emptiness on the back end.
Right.
The only thing that can, like, you can say if you felt differently, but I would say that the only thing is that can truly fill you up and then overflow to the point where you never need anything else is God. Now, are there times where I'm sad? 100%. Are there times when life just is beating me down and I'm stressed and I'm anxious? Yes. But I still have hope and joy in the middle of that, because I would argue the reason is I'm walking in my designed purpose.
Yeah, I don't disagree necessarily with the way in which you're breaking it down. That's all completely logical to me. I guess you mentioned anxiety. Anxiety throughout different times of my life. I think I've suffered normal levels of anxiety, just like most people. I don't feel like I'm an overly anxious person.
I would say I'm the same.
But like, I don't suffer from anxiety like how some people do.
Yeah.
But how can I connect this here? I feel like some people, what they will use, if they suffer from anxiety, it's very easy to say, well, hey, maybe you need to explore your relationship with Christ, and that will help you overcome this problem of anxiety. And then that, to me, that goes back to two things. Number one, that could be an illusion. But number two, it goes back to, I really still think the best word, I'm just gonna keep using it, is a tool. I think that can be a tool for some people, having a relationship with Jesus. But is it the only tool? Well, what about again, what if I sit down with a therapist and that therapist helps me really dive deep into why I feel the way I'm feeling, and through the power of therapy, a real science that I can be relieved from whatever issues I'm facing.
So I feel like my only issue when it comes to that is you're saying that if what I need to live my best life, quote unquote, is to believe in Jesus, then go ahead. You know what I'm saying? If that helps you achieve what you're trying to achieve, God bless. I ain't even mean God bless you. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Go
bless
ahead.
you. Just bless you. You
Go
know
ahead.
what I'm saying?
Yes.
But
Go ahead.
me looking at it, if that was the case, then that's just foolish to me. Like to just, you want to believe in Jesus to help you get through life, then go right ahead. To me, that sounds foolish. Because saying if you're just right for you and it's not actually true, if you believing in Jesus and devoting your life to him is an illusion, then that's foolish. I would look at it from that angle. And so that can't be good enough for me and it not be right. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like just go and follow Jesus. Oh, that's fine. You can do that if that's what makes you. But for me, I have to believe that that is right in order to do that. And if not, then it's foolish.
Right. Okay. So going off of that, and this isn't exactly my stance, but I do find some credence in it that, because I am somebody who says, hey, if you want to, if you feel like, what it takes for you to get better with whatever it is you're suffering with is to have a relationship with Jesus, do that. You know, if that's what helps you, do that. Now, there's a lot of literature that's out there that talks about people who often what happens is people who are suffering real problems, instead of going to a very trained clinical medical personnel member, they go to the church instead, and what they receive is not actually what they need. Yeah. They might think it
Definitely.
is.
You don't need a sermon, you need surgery. Like that, yes, exactly. And we understand
you don't need a sermon, you need surgery.
For certain cases, you know what I'm saying? Like, yes, that's why God gave us doctors. And that, I feel like, is foolish.
Yes.
But that's not what we're presenting.
Like,
yeah.
I think this is a funny story. My mom will think it's funny. She listens to the podcast. So, but it's like, I had ADD. Bad. And I remember my teacher, I think it was in 4th or 5th grade, was like, hey, y'all need to go like get him like medication, whatever. And she just said, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus, and then kept moving. And I was having this conversation with her last week. I was like, yeah, Mom, I still have ADD. Adderall would have been great in middle school. But like at the same time, like I still had a good life without it. That's a mild circumstance. And that it was a moment though of sometimes Christians believe that using modern medicine isn't trusting God. Rather, I would argue that it is trusting the gifts that he's given us. Anxiety medication is not a gift of, or is not a tool of the devil. It could be a gift of God in many circumstances.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like we could talk about how we feel, how we're doing in all of these moments. But at the same time, coming back to if God is real, the Christian God and the Christian worldview is true, it is more than how we feel, and it's more than having a good life. That it would be short-sighted to not view everything in view of eternity. And that if it's true, and if God is real, then the way we feel in one moment, like, it's nothing in comparison to all that I can see with God in eternity.
Right.
And the whole beautiful picture of the Bible, like, I'm assuming you've heard the term gospel. Do you know what it means?
Give it to me.
So it's the good news.
The good
and
news.
so
Okay.
I want to break down one thing real quick, because I think when we can view the Christian worldview simply, it helps us understand why it's important.
Okay.
So God created the world, and he created it good. Man made it fall. And then From then to
me, that
Jesus
sounds foolish.
is God trying to give humanity a path back to him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this man named Abraham or Abram, and he's like, hey, I'm going to make a great nation through you.
Mm-hmm.
And that nation is going to bless all nations. Right there was a promise of unity. That he was like, one day, all nations will be able to be blessed through you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, right there, division was caused in men. That people started to divide. Oh, we're the Jewish nation. We're the only people of God. Oh, we're the Islamic nation. We're the only whatever it is.
Right.
But God was trying to give them a path. In every single path, man failed. Moses was leading the Israelites out of slavery into the promised land, the good place, Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
And they get there and they disobey and they do all these bad things. But then eventually Jesus comes.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus says, Jesus comes and he is like, hey, I'm king.
Mm-hmm.
And the good news is the gospel is the word euangelion in the Greek. And euangelion meant the good news of a coming king.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Jewish people had this idea of a Messiah that was going to be this person who would make them the greatest nation like they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
But Jesus failed that picture because he wasn't coming to create a kingdom on earth. He was trying to create a heavenly kingdom as God. He said, I'm not delivering you from your pain in this world. I'm delivering you from your sin so you can have eternity with me.
Mm-hmm.
And so in that worldview, the only way to view the world is in view of eternity. And when you eliminate eternity, you can eliminate God.
Mm-hmm.
That if you're like, hey, like, let's forget about eternity, then you can find all these reasons to not serve him. Because then it comes down to, I want to live a good, comfortable life.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more than that. It's more than a good, comfortable life. It's eternity with God. And Jesus claims the only way to have that is through me.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, guys, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes this is like, Derrick, you've said sometimes like you don't understand how I am the way that I am.
Yeah.
With my lack of
Yes.
belief in whatever. So for me, I am not chasing. If I was chasing the good life, I would not be a high school history teacher at West Jeff, moving to New Orleans, Louisiana when I was 22 years old. Yet, how God provides purpose for all of his followers. I am able to live my purpose daily.
Mm-hmm.
And God, to me, never even comes into question. Like, that isn't even part of why I do what I do. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, how is that possible? That I'm able to live the life. Derrick, you see me every day. My students see me every day.
Yeah.
How then do you guys explain that I'm able to live and again, I'm far from perfect. I make mistakes all the time. But I am able to walk in a purpose every day where my purpose fundamentally at its core is I want to help others.
Mm-hmm.
How is that possible then? That I can do that when I've never used the tool of God in any of my thought process or decision making.
Mm-hmm. So,
and therefore, am I not then proof that God is not needed in our lives?
What if, like, just what if?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, all right, so you have a purpose in helping people.
Yeah.
Now, I think there's sometimes people, times in history even, we feel like, I'm sure many times in history, people have felt like, man, they have achieved the pinnacle of scientific achievement, whatever it is. It's like, I have a content life. People felt content without cars. But now that we have cars, why would we ever we wouldn't want to remove them because it enhanced our life. But they didn't know their need for a car until they had a car. Does that make sense?
Sure.
In that I would ask you, what if the purpose you feel is a piece of your purpose and you just can't see the fullness of it because of your perspective? That your perspective, it's like if I'm looking at this, like this water bottle right here in my face, all I see is the Kingdom Come podcast logo.
Right.
But if I back up, I see it's a water bottle. And that what if you're looking at your purpose so closely that you see your purpose as helping people, and that version of helping people is teaching them history? What if God's purpose for you is that magnified? As in, what if he could use you to be a instrument for his kingdom in a way that, like, man, many people have eternal life and purpose because of the influence you have in their life. And I don't mean purpose for the next 50 years until we die. I mean purpose for eternity.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So then my second part with it, because I wanted to address that aspect, and my second part with it, and I say this with the utmost respect.
Yeah.
Because I love you. I love what you do.
Yeah.
And I love how well you love the kids. But my counter to that, at least it's just how I feel, is that you're helping them for a short period of time. And the help that I want to give lasts a lot longer based off of my worldview. And so, although the things that you do are good and they're phenomenal, and I love that you do that, there is more on the other side with Christ at the center of being what I'm doing. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, I want to make sure I'm pursuing something that it doesn't just sound good to look at, but this is something that is transformative. I've seen by me sacrificing my time, my energy, and my efforts to love people well and invite them into a relationship with God, how that's changed them, changed their families, and then their future families that they're going to have when they get married and have kids. I've seen how that's changed people's entire family tree by loving Jesus, as opposed to, life skills per se. And I don't say that with any disrespect at all. Yeah. But like, what I'm desiring is for a deeper transformation to happen within the people that I'm reaching, as opposed to something that would only help them for a short period of time or even just this life, but something that'll last into the next life.
Yeah, because I guess the only thing I would push back on is when I'm, like, say, working with my students or working with people in my neighborhood. I don't view that the life skills that I'm imparting on people is short term. I view that being just as long term as any religious doctrine might be providing people with outside of eternity. The eternity.
Up to death, yes.
Until death.
Which,
when you eliminate
in the grand scheme.
When you eliminate eternity, though, you're eliminating so much of the picture from our worldview.
From your worldview. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why it's like, you can't eliminate that element of it and then be like, oh, that's all there is. Now this is why we're just trying to create peace, unity here on this earth. That we're trying to see eternal peace and unity.
Right. Well, so this is what I'll say. So even, guys, as we're throwing around the word eternity, right?
It's a big word.
It's a big word.
An infinite word, I think some would say. An
infinite word, right? So, because I guess through this conversation, I've, in my head, and I think a lot of people will equate eternity with an afterlife again. But you guys remember Gladiator, Russell Crowe?
I've never watched it.
I know of it.
What we do now, what is the line? What we do now will echo in eternity.
Okay.
Makes sense.
He wasn't referring to an afterlife by eternity, but I think he's referring to, hey, what we do and say now will have an impact not only on this generation, but the next generation, the next generation. And to me, that is a beautiful eternity that resonates with me.
Until the world ends, though.
Until the world ends. But then,
I mean, scientifically, the world's going to end.
Sure.
And that means if the world ends, everything was completely meaningless. Because think about it. If you die, you're not a spiritual being. You are just a physical human being. Like, we're eliminating the spirit from it. Then every ounce of pain that you felt years down the line, thousands and thousands of years, does not matter because you do not exist anymore and you no longer feel that pain. Now, did it hurt in the moment? Yes. But one day, the world is going to be forgotten in that worldview. And everything that happened there is completely meaningless because it's over and done with and gone. And nobody who was a part of it remembers it, has any inkling of trauma because of it. That thousands and thousands of years later, if there's another planet, then they will not even know that you existed.
Right.
So then our life doesn't matter.
Well, so and that goes back to that little monologue I think at from the one show that I saw on Netflix a little while ago. It's like, yes, ideas like pain and trauma are gone, but we're still in the stars. We're still simultaneously, we're everywhere. We're everywhere that you could possibly be.
To your point.
But your atoms are, but you're not.
Right. And to your point, even with your worldview, like, what you're saying still happens for us. We just also have. You know what I'm saying? That's another aspect to it. It's just like, for us, it comes from a thing like you're seeing, like, just like you said, like, it's just a small picture of it. And that for us, that happens too because we go back into the ground and
our bodies are also
decay
dust.
and all that. And that'll happen for us too, as well as life with Jesus.
And like you can try to find meaning in physical nothingness. I guess like as in like you disintegrate, you become a part of the universe to some degree. And it's like you can correct me if I'm wrong. But it's like it sounds like that is comforting to you because it offers an eternal view of your life while eliminating God.
So, something I've thought about. You guys know the author Christopher Hitchens?
Yeah.
Famously
Dead Atheist,
wrote Dead Atheist, God is Not Great. So this is one of the book specifically, God is Not Great.
Have you read it?
Yeah. Read it my freshman year of college, helped shape my view of all of this. And so, one of the to me, he was, you can disagree completely with his stances, but he was such a brilliant writer and just like how funny he was through his writing. And like, one of the things that he would say, that he said in the book, but as he would go around the country, if you look him up on YouTube, you can find tons of videos.
I'm going to bring up a video of him in a second.
Yeah. Like he famously said, why, when I die, why would I want to live in a celestial North Korea where I am serving, this concept, serving God, worshiping God, living for God. And that's one of my problems, you guys, with the Christian God, several other gods that exist is, if there is a God and it's a God that I would know and I would love, that would not be a God. The God that I would love would not be one that would require me to serve him.
He doesn't.
Worship him all the time.
But he doesn't.
Say more.
Like, as in, he does not require that of you.
Mm-hmm.
As in, that is why heaven is exclusive. Mm-hmm. So, if you choose to not follow God, it's like, respectfully, you can't be mad when you're not in heaven.
Right.
And I think sometimes people are like, why do I have to go through God or through Jesus to be in heaven? Yeah. It's like, it's his kingdom.
Right.
And if I want to be a part of his kingdom, I'm submitting to his lordship, knowing that he's my king and he's a good king. And if he's not your king, you're not going to be in his kingdom. But I want to be there because the Bible paints the picture of when Jesus comes back, he's going to create new heaven and new earth. And that is going to be new Eden as in like the Garden of Eden was this picture of perfection. And that is what that kingdom is. We're not just going to be, I think sometimes people just think we're living in a North Korea, like where we're just like on our knees worshiping God all day. And that's a wrong picture of heaven. Because it is, we are going to have a life. We don't know anyone who claims to know what heaven's going to look like is a liar. We have a picture, but the picture is more poetic, teaching us like the ideals of it. As in, it's going to be perfect. There will be no pain, death, crying, or sorrow. And that is because all of God's people who have chosen him will live in his moral perfection. And that there will not be a person there who does not want to be there. You're not going to get to heaven and be like, dang it, I wanted to go to hell. Or dang it, I wanted life without God. There will be not one person like that there, because every single person there would have submitted to his lordship. Have you ever watched the debate between Christopher Hitchens and William Lane Craig?
At some point I did, 100%. Yeah.
Christopher Hitchens got cooked.
Really? If I remember it correctly, I viewed it the other way.
That's crazy.
That's funny, because I would encourage you to watch it again.
Yeah, I'll definitely watch it again.
One of the cool things is, at that debate, there was hundreds of people who came in atheists who left believers in Jesus. Because there is something, and it's like, you can attempt to, or not attempt to, but like, you can try to boil it down to, this is Christians or just people who follow a religion trying to make themselves feel good. You can boil it down to, it's just people trying to give themselves purpose and meaning and all of these things. But at the end of the day, if God is real, he is the only one worth living for. Like, it's not about philosophy. It's not about other ways that could make my life serviceable. It's about, if God is real, there is only one life worth living. And that's the one that he created me to live. And I wish we could keep going much longer, but
we got to do a part 2, guys.
We do.
Because we really need to. Yeah, this is fun.
Part 4.
Yeah, my son's birthday party's today.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Yeah, so it's like, but what I want you to wrestle with and just think about is, okay, is there a chance God is real? And if there's a chance, am I willing to step out in faith to any degree to trust him that maybe what he said is true? Because I had a conversation. I was teaching an apologetics class at a retreat, and there was a kid in there. He was clearly an atheist. Like, you can kind of pick him out of a crowd sometimes. Yeah. And so he was being a little argumentative, but it was cool. Like, we were having this dialogue, and we had like a 40-minute conversation after the class. And I said, all right, you have logic to believe in God, and you have logic to not believe in God. You can make evidence and claims for both sides.
Sure.
And I was like, my question to him was, do you believe it is logical that God could exist? He said yes. And my challenge to him was, now go and trust him and challenge to see if that life is worth living. That night, he has an experience with God and an encounter with God, and he gives his life to Jesus and is still a follower of Christ to this day. And I'm not saying that's your story or going to be your story.
Right.
But what I want you to say, or to wrestle with in your mind, is there a chance he's real? Because if he is, he's worth living for. And that there's more to life than you see now. And I would love to see you see that.
Well, and I guess what I'm going to say, and we're going to have to get more into this part definitely. 2. But I guess, Austin, I don't disagree with that. I already accept.
Yeah.
Because remember, I'm not an atheist.
Right? Yeah, I know.
So I already accept that there's a possibility that there is a God. And I am completely 100% open to experiencing whatever that God has to offer to my life. I'm just waiting for him, her, it, they to reveal itself to me.
And what I part of it, I wanted to end it, but it's like, one thing here is saying I want that, but coming in with a mindset of like, okay, but I still feel this way. I still think there's a good chance he's not real kind of thing. As in, it's like, I trust you, but I don't at the end of the day. Like, and I think when we come to God with that mindset of, hey, I trust you, but I don't really, we're holding back what he's asking for all of. That he asks for all of our life, not like a, let me stick my toes in the water and see if God's going to come through.
Right.
Like, it's a, hey, I'm going to go all in and trust that you're going to come through. And that, like, yeah, there's so many people who have said, oh, I tried that whole Jesus thing and it didn't work. And I would argue you didn't fully try Jesus. Because if you fully try Jesus, you will never walk back. And, like, it's bold. It's a bold claim. It's a radical claim. But I believe it's genuinely the truth.
Well, I guess, okay, so
yeah,
to respond directly to that, and then we can start wrapping up, guys, because I know it's a busy day. So the requirement is to surrender completely. Yeah. That is, in your word, that is a radical thing to do.
I admit that.
And morally, philosophically, I fundamentally, and maybe we can, this is where we could maybe start with a part 2. I disagree with the notion that you should surrender completely to anything. Well, and let's leave it there.
I feel like that's too big to drop off.
Yeah.
All right, like I'm gonna ask you one question.
Yeah.
Is might go down if it's too deep of a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Has somebody broken your trust that has made you not, like, to a point where you cannot trust someone?
Yeah, no, because that is a good question. Because if the answer was yes, and like self-reflection, I would know if the answer was yes, I could point out to myself and say, hey, John, that's probably why you're saying that. But truthfully, that has not happened to me. Wow. Where someone has broken my trust to a point in my life.
Because I know that's a case for a lot of people.
Yeah, and that is the case for a lot of people. And I would 100%, with 100% honesty, tell you guys, like, hey, yeah, guys, you know, when I was, you know, in my early 20s, or when I was a kid, you know, this person, because of something specific I experienced, my trust was broken. And that's why I feel like I cannot surrender completely to something like that. For me personally, that is not the case. Yeah. That is not the case. And I'll make this commitment to you guys. If between now and the next time we do this again, I will continue to think more deeply about that question. Because if there is a case that maybe subconsciously I can point to that just right now, it's not coming into my mind. Yeah. I'll bring that up to you guys on the next podcast, because maybe there is. But right now, sitting here,
it's not like an obvious, this person betrayed my trust.
No. I've had wonderful people in my life from the time I was little to now. And I guess how I'm going to wrap things up from my perspective is it's the wonderful people who I've interacted with in the world, who I've even just crossed paths with for a short time. You know, whether it's Derrick, Austin, today you. Yeah. I see the beauty in humanity and in people. And for me, that will always be more than enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you see the God in me.
Yeah, man. Well,
I feel like it's a great place to.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. We thank you for taking time out of your day to just come and talk with us, dialogue, man. I feel this was an awesome conversation. Yeah. Man, we're just so grateful for you, man, just taking time. Man.
We got to do part 2, guys.
No, we definitely.
I mean, we already had 2 parts, so like, it'll be part 3 or 4.
3 or 4, whatever.
Yep. No, I truly appreciate you coming over here for this. I just ask, man, truly do wrestle with those things.
100%.
Because if God is real, he's worth living for.
Sure.
So
cool.
And as always, go encounter the kingdom of God everywhere you go.